guys, welcome back. My name's Jamie and this is the Charlie wrap top sewing tutorial. We are currently in the depths of winter, so I thought it would be really suitable to bring out one of my winter releases. This is the Charlie wrap top. I'll put some photos of it up on the screen as well so you can see it in full, but this is a piece that I released last year for the winter time. I was really inspired by this fabric that I've made it in. Last year I found it in this lilac and green color and I absolutely loved it, so I did a small run of that last year and whatever I could at the start of this year, but my fabric supplier quickly discontinued the fabric, so I wasn't sure if I was ever going to be able to bring it back, but luckily they had it in this beautiful baby blue gingham. I won't be sharing exactly where the fabric's from because I did just release this as a made to order piece for my brand, but if you search very easily you'll probably be able to find it and where it's from. So just a little side note. Gotta have some secrets, you know, but yes, if you search, I'm sure you'd be able to find it. It's probably very easy to find. Anyway, this is a beginner-friendly sewing pattern. The only difficult bit I think would probably just be the opening where you have like the strap going through, and maybe the bias tape if you don't know how to do bias tape. I do go over in the video what you can do instead if you don't want to do bias tape. That's just for the straps. But yeah, you don't have to do them. You can do a different method, which I talk about. And then, yeah, I feel like it's honestly like such an easy top to sew. You could probably sew it one afternoon and then, yeah, wear it that night or something. Also, if you wanted to, you could technically do it without the puffy sleeve. So if you don't want to add this sleeve to it, you can just like do this like drop sleeve sort of effect. You might want to like extend the pattern just so it's a little bit longer, like maybe make it come down to here or something, and then just hem this armhole instead. You could also add elastic in there as well if you wanted to maybe have it as like a little puffy sleeve or something like that. Just a little extra note if you wanted to do that. But yes, it's a very beautiful top. It is also kind of the exact same as the Chelsea wrap top. There is like some slight differences in like the front and the arms and everything like that, but I will also be adding the Chelsea wrap top into this pattern eventually, probably more towards summertime or like the end of the year or something like that. So do keep an eye out for that and keep that in mind if you do get this pattern. You will also get an update later on with the Chelsea wrap top version as well. All of the information about the pieces are in the instructions booklet as well as on the paper patterns themselves, but if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. And let's jump into the tutorial. Firstly, cut out your patterns by following the cut instructions on your paper patterns. I'm using a cotton linen fabric that is 130 GSM, so it's a mid-weighted fabric but has a really nice drape to it and flow to it. I would stick to lightweight and medium weighted woven fabrics for this top, like cotton, poplin, voile, rayon or linen. Remember to mark your notches on your patterns as well. If you're using a fabric with a pattern, just make sure the pattern of the fabric is all going the same direction and that you also flip your pattern pieces over so that you have a left and a right side for the front, and the same for the lining pieces. You'll also need bias tape for this top, and the measurements are found in the instructions booklet along with a tutorial on how to make continuous bias tape. I've also linked a video down below on how to make some. Now we can prep our pieces. I've just laid down my 2 front panel pieces like so to show the left and right side. Starting on one side, we'll have the good side facing up and take the front facing piece for this side and place it down with the good sides facing. Line the notches up that are on the shoulder and the front, and then you can pin along that front curve. Once you've done one side, you can do the same for the other side. Remember that you need to have a left and a right side, so make sure that you have your pieces flipped over. Place the back panel piece down with the good side facing up and line up the back facing at the neck curve with the good side facing the back panel and pin in place along that neck curve. Finally, take the sleeves and fold in half lengthways to meet the sides together and pin in place. Remember to fold one the opposite way to have a left and right side, especially if you're using a patterned fabric. Now all we have to do is sew a straight stitch with a 1 cm seam allowance down that long edge of the sleeves, as well as along those curved edges we pinned on the front panel and the back panel pieces to join the facings. Overlock those edges where we've just sewn, or you can use a zigzag stitch or an overcasting stitch if you don't have an overlocker. While we're here, we can also overlock or zigzag stitch the raw edge of the wrist on the sleeves. This is indicated on your paper pattern, but it will also be the shorter and smaller opening on the sleeves. So just overlock both of those edges by sewing around the opening. Then you'll also want to overlock or zigzag stitch the opposite side of the facing pieces to secure the raw edges. So overlock both the front facing pieces and the back facing pieces on the opposite edge to where we had just sewn. Head to your iron and press all your seams. I like to push the seams that we've sewn all towards the facing pieces and then flip the seam over so that the wrong sides of the fabric of the facing and the frontal back panel piece is facing or together, and then you can press the seam flat again, so then you have that nice crisp edge. And then for the sleeves, just lay the seam up in the middle and then press it to one side so that the whole seam and everything is nice and flat on the opposite side. This is optional, but it does help to keep that lining down and it adds that little bit of extra professional touch to your pieces. But we're basically just going to do a top stitch over that overlocked edge to the lining. All you need to do is lay the facing piece flat and push that overlocked edge or raw edge into the lining and sew a straight stitch down the middle of this overlocked edge with about a 0.5 centimeter allowance. Do this for both the front pieces and the back piece. If you've sewn the overlocked edges with a zigzag stitch, I would highly recommend doing this because it'll help reduce the fraying as well. Now we can attach the front to the back. Place your front pieces down with the good sides facing up. Like this, and then take your back panel piece with the good side facing the front panel piece and align the shoulders. Starting on one side, align the shoulder and that seam that attaches the facing to the front and back panel, as well as aligning the facing pieces, and then pin in place. Once you do one side, repeat for the other, again making sure that that seam is aligned properly and in the center. Pin along that top edge, and then we can sew it with a 1 cm seam allowance to join the front to the back. Then just overlock or zigzag stitch where we've just sewn on both sides. Now iron your seams flat again. I press that seam we've just sewn to the back of the garment and then fold the facing pieces in and press along that main seam so that the facing is sitting nice inside the top and that edge is nice and crisp. Next we'll do a top stitch to hold the facing on that shoulder seam. We can do this by lining up the seams on the main piece and the facing piece, and then you can put a pin or 2 pins in here to hold it in place. We'll sew using the stitch in the ditch method, which means we are literally sewing in that seam on the main side of the top. Once you do one side, you just have to repeat the exact same method for the other. And here's what it should look like. This really just helps keep the facing from flicking out when you're wearing it. Because this is a wrap top, we need to create an opening to thread the straps through. I typically make this with the opening on the right hand side of the garment when you're wearing it, but you can technically swap it over to the other side, or you can make it an opening on each side. I'll just show you how I do it normally, and then you can decide what you'd like to do. So for my top, the right side will have the opening in it. I'm not going to pin it just yet because we will overlock the sides first to prevent the raw edges from fraying when we thread the strap through it. So you can go ahead and overlock or zigzag stitch down those sides on the front panel piece and the back panel piece. For the other side though, we'll attach this as normal. So flip the front piece over to the back and have the good sides of the front and back panel facing, and then align the sides up together and make sure those notches are aligned as well. Pin down this edge from the underarm all the way down to the hem. And then you're going to sew a straight stitch starting from that underarm down to the hem. And then once you've done that, you can also overlock or zigzag stitch where we've just sewn. This is what yours should look like. So the left side is attached and then the right side is still open with those overlocked sides. Now we'll flip the right side over the shoulder to have the front and back facing with the good sides facing. Pin along those side seams and pin where the notches are. You can also either mark with tailor's chalk or with a pen, or just keep note with a pin like what I did, because those two little notches are basically where the bias tape will be thread through, so then you have that adjustability. When you go to sew the sides, you're going to leave a gap between the notches, which is basically about 3 centimeters, and this will be the opening for the straps. Now you can begin to sew with that 1 centimeter seam allowance. So start from the bottom and sew up until you reach the notch. Do a couple of back tacks back and forth to help make sure that this is nice and secure and strong, and then lift your needle up, cut the thread and skip over that little bit between the 2 notches, which is about 3 centimeters. And then you can place your presser foot back down, put your needle in when you're at the next notch. And then you can continue sewing. Remember to do a few back tacks at the beginning when you start to sew to strengthen that area, and then continue to sew up until you get to the underarm. So this is what that should look like now. We will come back to this in a second, but firstly we need to press our seams with the iron. On the left side, which is the side that was sewn normally, you just need to press your seams to the back of the garment. You may need to also maneuver the part under the arm around just because it's a bit of a curve. Then for the other side that has that opening, you're going to need to press your seam open so that you have the overlocked edge of the back panel piece going to the back, and then the overlocked edge on the front side going towards the front. Hopefully that makes sense, but you basically just want to have that seam open and flat so that you can sew a little rectangle around the opening, which we'll do in the next step. It should look like this, and now we're basically going to sew a rectangle around this opening on that overlocked edge, just to keep those little overlock pieces sitting down and not rubbing when we're putting the bias tape through it. Put the top under the needle and make sure it's flat, and starting from that top shorter edge, leaving about a 1 centimeter gap from the opening, like the opening hole part where the bias tape's going to go through, you'll leave a 1 centimeter gap from the top of that. Sew from one edge of the overlocked piece to the other, which will probably be about 1 centimeter. Then you're going to leave your needle in the fabric, lift the presser foot up, and then swivel your fabric around so that you're going parallel to the overlocked seams. Then you just sew down the overlocked edge until you're about 1 centimeter past the opening. Lift the presser foot with your needle still in the fabric, swivel, place it down, and then sew once more to the other side. And then you do the same thing again. Lift the presser foot, leave your needle in the fabric, and then swivel, and then continue to sew back to the start. And that's basically like that little rectangle shape. Again, this just holds down those overlocked pieces. It also really secures that sort of area on the top, because that's the part that will have the bias going through it. Hopefully that makes sense. It's a little hard to explain, but basically you just sew a rectangle around the opening to secure those overlocked edges, and this is what it should look like. And again, just makes it nice and secure and really professional. Okay, next we'll be gathering in this step, so you'll need to adjust your stitch length to the longest length on your sewing machine. If your machine has a removable casing piece, you can take that off. That makes it so much easier with this step. Take your sleeves, and on the larger opening, which is the side for the shoulders or where the sleeve will be attached to the armhole, you'll need to sew a gathering stitch around the openings. You can sew one gathering stitch, but two is typically a little bit better because it helps to hold the gathers in place a lot better when you're sewing. So all you have to do is sew around that opening and do 2 gathering stitches. Remember, don't back tack at the beginning or end because you want to be able to pull on those threads to gather them. Once you've done both of the sleeves, you can then gather up your fabric by pulling on the threads gently. Now take the main piece of the top and flip it the wrong way out, so that basically the good sides of the front and back pieces are facing and the wrong side of the top is on the outside. And then take your sleeves and flip them the right way out, so the good side of the fabric should be on the outside. Push the gathered edge of the sleeve through the armhole of the main panel piece and align the bottom seam of the sleeve with the bottom sleeve of the top, and then there should be that little notch marked on the sleeve, which is the middle point of the sleeve, and this should meet up with that top seam on the shoulder of the main top piece. Pin in place, and then you can pin around the armhole and spread the gathers around evenly, and then try and avoid just having them bunch up in one place. It's really good if you just have them nice and evenly spread around. And then once you've done one side, you can just repeat for the other sleeve. Now we can sew a straight stitch around where we've pinned and attach the sleeve to the top. Remember to change your stitch settings back to the regular one as well, because sometimes I sew my pieces back here and I've still got the gathering stitch setting on, so just make sure that you switch it back. Once you finish both sides, you can then pull out the gathering stitches by simply pulling on the threads, and if they break or you struggle to get them out, you can just use a seam ripper to pull them out. Then you'll need to overlock or zigzag stitch over where we've just sewn on both of the sleeves, and just make sure that you're also catching all of those gathers while you're doing this. If you've overlocked your pieces like I have and you have that extra tail of thread left over, you can take a larger needle and thread it through the threads on the armhole, and then take the tail end of the thread through the needle and pull everything through the threads to secure the loose ends. And then you can just cut off the little bit of extra bit that's there. We'll create a casing for the cuffs now, and you have two options. You can do what I do in this video, or you can fold that overlocked edge over once by about 1.5 centimeters and just sew around to create your casing. Or you can do a double fold to hide the overlocked edges like what I do here. Firstly, fold over that edge that we'll be hemming by about 0.5 centimeters, so it's basically just the overlocked edge, and press that with your iron. Then fold over again to hide the raw edges by 1.5 centimeters and press again. Press all the way around the edge, and this will help shape the hem for when we're doing the casing, and then just repeat it for the other sleeve. When we sew, we're going to leave about a 3 to 4 centimeter gap to put the elastic through, and we'll also be sewing as close to the double folded over edge as we can. This will be similar to how we attached the sleeves before, just by placing the cuff through the arm of the sewing machine and then begin to sew, starting from one end and going around to the other, but again just leaving that gap, so you're not meeting up your stitches, you're just going to leave about a 3 or 4 centimeter gap so that you can get the elastic through. Once you've done one side, repeat for the other. Thread a safety pin through one end of your elastic, and then thread this through the casing from that opening that we left. Be sure not to lose the elastic when you're pushing it through. If you'd like, you can put a pin or another safety pin in the other end and just kind of have it held in the fabric like what I do, just so that you don't lose it. Make sure your elastic also doesn't roll or turn over on the inside of the casing, and then once you reach the end, just take it out back through that opening and remove the safety pin. Then overlap the elastic by 2 centimeters and sew a zigzag stitch back and forth a few times over the elastic. You can also hand stitch this back together if you struggle to do a little zigzag stitch there, because it is kind of a small width of elastic that you're sewing over. Once you've done one side, repeat for the other. Once you've sewn both the elastics up, you can then also close up the opening by continue to sewing that straight stitch over the part where we sewed before on the casing. You may need to also stretch the fabric and the elastic as you go so that it isn't bunched up. I'd also try and avoid sewing on the actual elastic as well. Now you'll need to overlock or zigzag stitch over that bottom edge for the hem, as well as the bottom edge of the front facing piece that will be in line with the hem. Then you'll need to take your bias tape and on one of the shorter edges, fold it back onto itself lengthways so the good sides are facing, and sew a straight stitch across that short edge. Then cut off the excess fabric and you can flip that around the right way and then fold the bias into itself so that that top end of the corner is all squared off. And then just repeat for the other strap. Remember, you only need to do one end of each strap because these are the ends that'll be kind of poking out of the top, and then the other ends, they don't really need to be done. They're fine. Now sew your straps up by folding in that top corner that we created, and then the raw edges will be folded lengthways inside to hide them inside the bias, and then you just sew a straight stitch close to the edge of the fold, and then do this for both of the straps. Take the top, and on the left side you'll need to fold the front facing back over to have the good sides facing the front main piece. Line up that front straight edge and the notch, and then take the longer strap and push it up to the corner where the seam of the facing and the front piece is. Make sure the end of the bias that is going through here is the raw edge, and the other end that we closed off before is the part that will be sticking out. I also like to have the stitched side of the bias facing towards the bottom of the top and the side without the stitching on the top part where that seam is. Once you've lined that up, pin the strap in place and pin down along that edge. Then we'll do the exact same for the opposite side, except the strap for the right hand side will be the shorter one, as this is the piece that will go over the top, and the one on the left needs to go through that opening, so that'll be the longer one. If you end up changing the sides that the opening is on, just make sure that you change the straps over to, or otherwise they'll be a little bit too short. You can also just have the longer straps for both of the sides. You just might have a little bit of extra fabric kind of hanging off in your ties. Then just sew a straight stitch down where we've pinned on both of those sides, followed by overlocking or zigzag stitching. Where we've just sewn, you'll kind of have a little bit of bulk of the fabric because that's where the bias is. You have the front main piece and then you also have the front facing piece. So what we're going to do to make this nice and pointy when we flip it back out, we're going to cut diagonally by about 0.5 centimeters just on that corner where we've just sewn. This will just help when we flip them out. So here we can flip them out and flatten the seams and give them a nice press with the iron to make them nice and crisp. Then we just need to prep the bottom for hemming. What I do is make sure the front piece and the front facing is flat with the wrong sides facing, so just how the garment would be when you're wearing it. And then fold up both of them together at the bottom hem and press with your iron. You're going to be folding it up by 1 centimeter as well. This creates a crease on the front facing that makes it easier to follow when we sew that part in the next step. Then all you have to do is continue to fold up the hem as you usually would by 1 centimeter, and once you get to the other side with that front facing, you'll just repeat what we did before. So make sure it's all flat with the wrong sides facing, or just how it would be worn, and then fold up both of the facing and the front piece together by 1 centimeter and press with the iron. Okay, so the front facing part will be sewn a little differently because we want to kind of like box it in together. You'll first flip the facing over so that the good side of the facing is facing the good side of the front main panel piece, and then make sure it's nice and flat and align with the bottom, and then you can pin along that bottom edge where the hem will be. Where we ironed, you can see that there's like that crease. This is basically where we'll be sewing along. Flip over and pin the other side too, and then we can head over to the sewing machine and sew a straight stitch along that bottom edge where the crease is, which basically just gives you that 1 centimeter seam allowance, and then it'll basically box that whole area in once we flip it over. Then just like before, we're going to also cut diagonally across that little bit of fabric to help when flipping this out to make it nice and pointy. Repeat everything for the other side and then give both sides a quick press with the iron once more so that they sit nice and flat. Now all you have to do is finish sewing the hem. Start from the bottom corner of the front facing and front panel piece and then sew from one end all the way along the bottom to the other side. Once you're done, give it one final press with your iron and you're finished. It's so hard, I've tried to read your mind, feel how much you've cried, lost more than I could. And that is the finished tutorial. I hope you enjoyed and I can't wait to see you guys create your very own Charlie wrap top. As I said in the video, if you want to, you can make this like wrappable on both sides by having like the opening on both sides and using the long straps measurements for both of those front straps, and then you can like wrap it through on both sides, I guess, or just like at least on one side, however you want to feel. Or if you want to do opposite, you don't have to do it this way, you can do it the opposite way as well. Really make it your own. Such a versatile piece and it's really fun and gorgeous, and I can't wait to see you guys create your very own. So please be sure to tag me at sewing_in_May on Instagram or at inmay_the_label on TikTok, and I can't wait to see everything. So yeah, that's it. Bye.